Welcome to the Regina Queen show. We hope you all are having a beautiful morning. We are here today. Lily Patel and I are here to bring you some morning inspiration. And first of all, we would like to send our apologies for the delay. We were in broadcast, but it wasn't live. And the whole time, we know we have some friends and who were waiting for Lily Patel to come live. So sorry for the inconvenience as we were pursuing with our show, but we wasn't live. And we had a beautiful time together thinking you guys were watching us. But so let's continue. The most important thing is that we are still here to bring you some inspiration later. It's never too late.
That's right.
And I have here with me Lily Patel, writer, actor, and civil rights lawyer. And Lily Patel is here to give us all some inspiration on how it feels to be a social phobia and not knowing what we can do when we all have those gifts and talent, hidden talents and gifts. And sometimes, people are afraid to bring out their most gifts and talents, not knowing that that hidden treasure can make a beautiful positive change in our world. If not the entire world, at least a friend, a neighbor, a family member. If we can save one life, that is what all that matters. And thank you so much, Lily Patel, for being here with me today on the Regina Queen show. And as we can go into touching up on some of the topics that we had touched this morning about the inspiration of one another, inspiring people, with our gifts and talents and experiencing social phobia and how can we, unlock that disorder of social phobia. And so, Lily Patel, can you share your story with us of what life has been like for you as experience some I wouldn't say most of your life of being a social phobia, but just, at times you have encountered social phobia to empower others.
Definitely. I was a very shy child. I didn't speak English until I went to kindergarten. So, and of course, it's not like I started speaking right away, but I was very shy through elementary school, was in speech classes, as I was learning how to speak English, and just very fearful of using my voice. So I I made friends, I learned about other people, but I was always afraid to just, share myself, my gifts, my voice. And for example, my parents are immigrants from Asia. And, my mom used to make me bento boxes for lunch. And other kids would make fun of me. They'd say, like, oh, are you eating raw fish? My mom doesn't she never put raw fish in my bento boxes, but the food was different looking. And so I went home and told my mom, please don't ever make me a bento box for lunch again. Just make me peanut butter and jelly or ham and cheese, which is such a travesty because like her bento boxes were so good. But
Oh,
but it was just the fear, the fear of sticking out, standing out. And growing up with a where Chinese was being spoken at home, where we had our Chinese cultural our Chinese culture, our food, the language, our holidays that we would celebrate, the special foods that you would eat, and just not feeling like it fit in. So then I learned English quickly. I wanted to be American. I used to feel like, oh, I wish I were taller like an American. I wish my eyes were bigger, like the American eyes. I wish I were blonde with blue eyes, and just
yeah.
feeling afraid, to say anything because all my ideas were just so different. I had just a very different background. And I remember when I went to law school, I used to just every time, even in high school, And before that, whenever the teacher would call on me, I would start sweating, and, my heart would be beating in my throat, and I would just choke up and not be able to get a thought out. And, and so of course, I didn't do really well at school, a lot of the times because I wouldn't be able to answer the question that was being asked. And I remember classmates and friends who would support me and say, "Hey, Lily, it's because of your different cultural background. It's because of your ethnicity. It's because you are female, instead of male at law school, where the profession is still, predominantly male, that you contribute just by being present in the classroom with your ideas, with your background. And so you should absolutely use your voice." And it's been years. Now I'm in my 40s, and it's been, I was in law school in my 20s. It's been 20 years of working on how to overcome that social, anxiety and social phobia, and to feel confident in letting my voice come out, and putting my stories out there, and sharing my gifts. I'm a writer, I'm a singer, and I still, I don't just perform. Like, I have to build myself up and talk myself and believe that, okay, yeah, I can sing and people actually want to hear my singing voice, but I've got these, scripts. I've written many scripts, and I just started script writing last year. Before that, I wrote stories, which I have a lot of stories also, mostly unshared, unread. A lot of my
Yes.
scripts, just sitting on them, they're just not read, they're just sitting there. And it's the fear that nobody is going to want to read my scripts or see them on screen, or help to develop my film or film my films. And so slowly, I've been working on, okay, for example, I shared my latest script with two friends. The first friend was to ask, is this story cliche or predictable? She said, no, this is really good. And then I said, okay, it's a scene, it's a scene from the movie, one location, two actors. It would be me and the male actor. It's an epic love story, that's going to span through a lifetime, our lifetimes, and so we did a table read. But even up until right before we were going to do the Zoom and read the script together, I almost sent him a message to cancel because I was afraid. I was like, no, it's not going to work. But then I didn't, and we read through the scene, and he was like, okay, when are we going to film this? Because this is a great script. And so I said, well, let's do it in September. He was like, make sure that we do this because, like, procrastination is the enemy, of
Yes. Yes.
creativity. It's an enemy, against gifts. So
And it procrastinates. The procrastination comes in when we're feeling that that fear.
that's right. And not confident.
Yes. Yes. And um, like you said that you didn't have a voice when you were younger, and you know I understand what you mean by the voice as well, because the voice is so powerful. Because I felt, as I explained to you, um, as we talked about earlier when we thought we were live, and
I
I
know.
really like that first one. We hit so many good topics, but uh, the voice, I didn't feel that I had a voice anymore after the tragedy that I encountered, and I felt that, oh, no one will listen to me. No one, because I'm, she's a grieving mother. No one is going to hear what she has to say. She has nothing left in her. And that is what I felt. And now, um, I'm so grateful because the Most High have given me the strength. Has put in, the power in me to be able to use my voice, and I get from other angel moms, how I have impact, their lives just
That's
by,
right.
being able to, speak, to them, and I'm really, really, really grateful for that, and I'm really, really shocked very shocked because I never ever thought that anyone would want to hear my voice. So yes, our greatest gifts are lies within us, and this is what we want to bring you guys here for this morning with Lily Patel of experiencing, if you are experiencing some social phobia, um, embrace it and take an acknowledgement to what you are going with, because some of your greatest talents and gifts are your hidden treasures, and it can change our world today with people in our world today in a positive way. So
Yes.
yeah, so Lily Patel, share with us what you have did, from your endeavors that you have did, and you are the what you are afraid to let go, to unleash, some of your hidden treasures. And
Right.
I know
Like,
when you spoke about, I didn't mean to cut you off,
oh,
one that I was really admiring um, about the George Floyd um, series. So, uh,
right. I'm working on this series, one of my series. It's going to focus on this civil rights law firm, and I'm going to play the role of the founding partner. I am a civil rights lawyer, so I have some, knowledge about this area. But I work with a civil rights lawyer in North Carolina, and actually he's not the only one, but there are cases right now happening around the country where groups of people, like class action cases, where groups of people, classes of people, had suffered after what happened with George Floyd, and then they went out and engaged in peaceful protesting, and then got injured because of flash grenades
mhm.
and tear gas. They had to take off their masks, and it was during the COVID pandemic, and maybe they got sick, and then a family member got sick and died. There were all these things that happened, or somebody, a flash grenade landed near them and blew up, and it's meant to disperse the crowd. But then what happens is certain protesters got injured very severely. And so they went to a law firm to try to, seek assistance in how to, get uh, damages, for their medical bills, for their loss of their ability to use, their foot or their hand or whatever. And so in this series that I've been writing, I have the law firm get clients who are coming in who, for example, I have a client who comes in and she had her foot, when the flash grenade blew up, it exploded on her foot. And so she lost use of her foot. And so she's coming in because she has this case now, and she is trying to find a lawyer to represent her. And we decide to represent her, of course. We have to.
Yes,
And
yes.
and the whole series is called. I haven't decided what it's called, but the law firm is called like Chung, Rodriguez, and Floyd. I think
Oh,
that's what I named it.
that's
That's the
wow,
name of the law firm, and
incredible.
it's like CRF. And then I have the lead character, like during a meeting in their conference room, she's like playing with the acronym CRF, and then it stands for, and she makes it stand for Civil Rights Fighters. So I
Yes,
mean, it's just like I have this whole world planned out. The lawyer that I work with is a solo practitioner, and he says one of the hardest parts of his job as a civil rights lawyer is that he can't find anybody else to work with him. So I've written this series starting out with just her in the law firm, and as she's working on these cases, as she's going to court with her clients, other lawyers, all female, because it's the world that I'm creating, of female lawyers of color, see her, and they are inspired by her, and actually just like show up at her law firm and ask, hey, you know what? I've been working as a corporate lawyer for 10 years now. It's not bringing me joy. I see what you're doing. I think I lost my way, and I've always wanted to help, other people especially people who are being treated unfairly, especially people being discriminated against because of their race or their physical ability or their sex or whatever. And I want to come work with you. And so it's the series that I'm building, and the law firm will build as they add more lawyers slowly who come to work at the law firm. And the first episode, since I'm Asian, it opens with a scene where an Asian client comes in. And I have to say, as an Asian lawyer I guess I started practicing in 2003, so it's almost 20 years now. I've really only ever had 1 or 2 Asian clients. And they were not for civil rights cases. They were for business, like, oh, I want to buy this business, or I want to merge with this business. And I understand this also as an Asian, that any discrimination that I experienced growing up, I never complained about. I never. One time, I actually experienced sexual harassment while I was at school, at law school, and I did not report it. But I told a friend who reported it for me, and I didn't want him to, but he did it anyway.
Yes, well, of course.
It was the fear. It was just the fear, the stigma, and I was really upset. But it just showed me, even in my practice as a civil rights lawyer, as a lawyer doing general practice, I rarely had an Asian client because we don't complain. We don't file complaints. We don't want the stigma. We don't want to lose face. For me, I was like, well, maybe I did something wrong that invited the harassment. I just thought it was my own fault.
Yes.
And so in this opening scene, I have this Asian woman come in, and what happened to her, in light of the Asian hate that's been going on in the last couple of years, especially because of the pandemic, she comes in because her mom was standing at a bus stop and gets beaten to death. And so she's coming in and she's saying, I don't know what to do, but, I've got this is what happened. And so I'm counseling her and trying to explain that, what, thank you so much, first of all, for coming forward, using your voice. Second of all, we have to do something because this is the time now,
Yes.
Because it can't be that in the last 20 years of almost 20 years of practicing law, that there have not been Asians who have been suffering from discrimination.
Yes.
But it's like now Asians are finally coming forward and using their voice.
Yes.
Once other Asians see that happening, that's going to inspire people to come forward and to try to correct wrongs from the past, even, or just to help make sure that it doesn't happen again to their own children in the future. Like what you were saying, like when you use your gifts, when you use your hidden talents, when you use your voice, maybe it only affects the next person next to you, but it can alter the course that they take in their life for the better. It can, and then what they do can have a rippling effect that really makes things better for a lot more people.
It really does. It really does. Because, you can impact one person, and that one person can impact another person, so it's what we put out, it spreads out, like a domino effect. It taps into one to another.
But my story isn't going to be like Law and Order, where they only like focus on the, in the first half they focus on the crime, and then in the second half they focus on the courtroom scene. But it's going to be, it's going to go more in depth into the backgrounds of the lives that were involved. The characters, the lawyers have lives. We're not just like in the courtroom all the time. My law firm is going to have a full kitchen where, we, instead of going out and getting fast food, because a lot of lawyers have to do that, because when we're preparing for a trial, we might be working 16 straight hours trying to get all our documents together. So we have a kitchen, we have a coffee maker, and we make our own food. And
Yes.
I've written it into the story that, you know, every other day I make a batch of chocolate chip cookies because the work is so difficult. Like, we need
Mm.
some comfort food.
I
And, you
can
know, what's more
imagine.
comforting than chocolate
Yes,
chip cookies, you
I
know?
could
And
imagine.
so there are some scenes where, you know, I bring into the scene like, oh, you know, I made my sweet and sour Chinese baby back ribs, you know, barbecue ribs.
Yes.
And you know, we talk about how when the opposing counsel comes in, he's like, wait a second, what is that
Yeah.
smell I smell in your law firm? Because
Wow.
we're not just lawyers, we're actually like humans and people. And 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 a lot of times I feel like what we see on TV, what lawyers are like, okay, yeah, they like, I can be like that too. I can be a real bulldog in court if I have to be.
Yes.
I'd rather not. But you know, I'm still human also, and maybe it's not written like that, you know, like a full human being, a full character, because whoever's writing it isn't a lawyer, but I'm a lawyer. You know, I can bring this, and I've been gifted with this education, you know. Education is a gift, you know.
Yes.
Not
And,
everybody can afford it.
it really is. Education is really a gift. And I really feel that, everyone should take advantage of, your education, whether it's, I say it's never too late, because some people are behind in
That's the
education
truth.
and then
It's
they go
never too late.
back, but it's
Absolutely.
never too late. So we empower, everyone to take advantage of education. So it's
That's
so
right.
very important.
Of
Yes.
learning, of learning.
Yes. It really is.
And it's my hope that, you know, when this series finally comes to the screen, that, you know, when little girls are watching it, they're thinking like, oh my God, like, I can grow up to be a lawyer.
Yes, and see,
I
this is the
can
type
I can
of
fight these injustices with my
yes, and
voice.
this is the type of scenes, and stories and, movies that we would like for our youth, to see. We want them to see some real life stuff, like, how it is to be homeless, on the streets, and, how it is to, see civil people fighting
That's right,
for, our
to be right,
activists fighting for, civil rights and everything,
right,
and
right.
and we have our as babies, we are born with these gifts, certain gifts, and growing up, and then people are encountering different endeavors and tragedies and stuff like that that could be blocking them from,
Yes.
identifying the gift that is in them to use that gift. But seeing, you know, these type of written stories, short films, movies, the positive, it's good for our youth to see movies with some little argument and fighting, or, but to see that someone is in that movie showing who's right and who is wrong, because it's educating our youth as well to know what is right and what is wrong. Um, like, I have, I want to send a shout out to a friend of mine's on my Facebook, and her name is P Chain, the I'm not really good with names, but I follow her, and she does short films as well, and I admire, her short films, because there is a message in the films. And the one that you are writing, about the George Floyd, protests, and people having a positive, peaceful protest, should have rights to be entitled to that and not be harmed
That's
by
right,
security.
absolutely. That is completely a violation of your human and civil rights. It's under the First Amendment. It's the First Amendment, you know, to the
And
US
your
Constitution,
project,
the right to free
yes,
speech and
yes,
to peacefully assemble. And then
yes,
if you're just going out there and just exercising your First Amendment right, you are not expecting, and you should be free from, you know, being physically harmed or even possibly killed when you're just doing something that's completely within your right and it's peaceful. It's just, yeah. And so I think what I fear is sometimes, it's like I feel sometimes like I'm I'm like bothering that hornet's nest, and I'm afraid that if I get these stories out there that somebody's going to hate me, you know what I mean? And try
Yes,
to harm me or my
yes,
family, you know what I mean?
yes, yes. And see, that is the problem too, a feeling of what others feel. And what I would like to say about that, that is something positive that you are doing, and you just don't know, the impact. And this is the time now. It always have been the time, with these unpredictable times we have in life,
Yeah.
but this is the time to put, you know, um, to show people how to execute their rights, you know, and their civil rights. This is the time,
Yeah.
because of the police brutality, because of the non-peaceful protesting, when people, citizens are going out, humanity, no matter where you're from, to fight for something that is right. This is the time that your project needs to be out. That's just the way I feel, because of these unpredictable times and things that we are encountering these days.
Yeah. And also just I feel sometimes a lot of times when we see things in the news, it it almost looks like it's like if you're watching a TV show about surgery, you feel like removed from it because you're not there's no like personal connection to it. But the thing that's so powerful about storytelling is that when you do it really well,
Yes.
the listener, the audience connects with it. And so it's so important that as a storyteller to remember that, okay, it's important always, I think, to get your ideas
It,
out because you
it's,
never
it
know
is
who can
important,
connect with.
because there's
But,
a message in
right.
the
But
story.
also, exactly. But also, like when I'm looking at these topics, I don't want, like when people watched what happened with George Floyd, like I was in tears, but I'm sure that not everybody connected with it. But when
Mhm.
you expand it, and write a story, give a backstory, some context to it, okay, George Floyd was a father, maybe there's a scene where you see him playing with his kids. Then that might hit a nerve with another father who's looking at his kids and
It
playing with them.
definitely will.
So it's there's ways of so that you don't just get page, that, what happened to George Floyd is, and what we saw in the news was like page 1566 in his 1566 page book. But as a storyteller, we can we can tell the other 1565 pages, we and so that people can connect and relate, because when you only get that one page, like, and this is like totally, what do you call it, trigger alert, but I get really frustrated when I see these like there was a child suicide case in Utah, I think in the last year, where the child was 10 and she was being bullied because of her race, because she was black. And she was 10 and she committed suicide. And and that's it. I don't know anything else about that story. I don't
Yes,
know if the parents are in court, filing against the school, but it's but my daughter was 10 at the time, and I just like took a look at her and I was just like, this is a huge deal, and so it's a topic that I am going to have this law firm, deal with, and we're going to sue the school district, for not
yes,
protecting this child from
yes,
the race harassment and racially hostile environment that she was subjected to, that led to this completely, irreversible tragic event. um but when we look at it on the news, we just get that last page, or the
yes,
page, that one page in this long
yes,
story. But when you can create a television series in a world around fictionalized characters, you can expand on the story. So this girl, who committed the suicide, you can go into the backstory. You can look at the mom's story, and the parents' story, and then you can zoom out and look at her friends and how did this affect them, her 10-year-old friends. Because when something, I have a friend who his girlfriend committed suicide when they were like juniors in college, and he says like that so changed his life because you don't expect at such a young age for that to happen. And
Yes.
it could alter the way that you live your own life. He's now a medical doctor. I'm sure that, that that the gift of life, is something that was made like blaringly obvious and real for him when he saw this young life just suddenly get extinguished, his, it's, but anyway, my point is, as a storyteller and in wanting to use my voice, it's important to use my voice, even when I feel fearful, like, like this is a trigger warning. Like, I don't know if it's going to cause, like, have bad effects,
Well,
you
I
know?
suggest at least try one of your hidden projects. At least try one and see the impact that it
Right.
does for whoever it comes across. And
Right.
right now, I really strongly believe the one for George Floyd, that series, I believe that will impact so many protesters who have been violated of their civil rights. And that one is was just this is the time now for you to bring it out, you know.
I wrote like a short 5-page scene. Specifically, it was the courtroom scene, and it was about, it was the lawyer representing the plaintiffs, this class of people who were harmed during a protest, in the days following George Floyd's brutal murder. And I've had it read a few times, and I brought it up to one of my my actors and production groups and said, hey, can we make this 5-page, 5-minute film? And it wasn't like it didn't generate interest with them. So I just kind of like tabled it, and just thought like, oh, maybe it's not good, or maybe, but you're right, maybe I should take it to a different group and see like, hey,
Yes.
do you want to film this it's one scene in the courtroom. They're like maybe about, you know there's 3 witnesses that testify about their injuries. There's the lawyer who represents them. There's the opposing counsel who represents the police, force in the city, and it's in a fictional city called Randomville. And but and then there's a judge and there's a bailiff, and so it could be done, but I
Yes.
just,
It
so
could
far
be.
it
It can.
hadn't like
Yes.
generated enough interest that I felt like, okay, I can get this done. It
Well,
felt
actually,
insurmountable.
yes.
That's
Yes.
why I'm going to do this other scene where it's just me and the one actor, and then we're just going to have a camera person, and then that,
Yes.
I just have to
Yes.
get one person to be on board. But
Yeah.
like this
Just
other
one
scene,
person. Yeah.
like I would have to get the location, like I'd have to get a space that looks like a courtroom, and so yeah, it hasn't like generated enough interest that I kind of like tabled it and just like kind of put it aside. And and as creatives, we always have to go against our like discouragement and just like desire to give up
Yes.
at times.
Yes. Yes. And do you have family members and friends that, suggest that you let go of some of that and, social phobia?
you know my family was not. I started singing when I was in high school, and it was really like my first love, my first passion. and I wanted to study singing. I wanted to go to Rome and study opera. And but my parents, my parents are Asian parents. They did not encourage that. So I actually did not sing for years. Like I took a break from singing. I did not sing just like for years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing for most of my life, but I have journals and diaries and stuff that I actually, some of them I even got rid of because I was like, well, nobody's going to ever see this. It's not something that my parents have ever encouraged. And that's why I became a lawyer. That was something that was encouraged. That was a job that would what they thought was a secure job that would ensure that I would be employed, which I have to be thankful to God I've been employed for most of my life. But I do have, new friends who are in the industry who are supportive and encouraging and say like, you have to get your stories out there. You have to really like make a plan and just get it filmed, Lily, just
Yes.
go and do it. And
Yes.
but and then I have the other issues of being creative is like, okay, this is just one series. I've got this other series, that I've already written 6 episodes for that I'm like
Yeah.
more interested in. I've got this feature film that I'm going to, that I've been
Yeah.
working on. And I've got this other trilogy of films that, I want to work on. And then I have all these like short stories. And
You
so,
have a
yeah.
vast amount of projects there that you need to
Yeah.
bring out. And
Yeah. And then I feel like, okay, so I'm going to take this first step and just film this one scene because this was the easiest. But it's also, I have to say, it's also one of my favorites because it is a love story, and love has been, as long as I can remember, has been like my favorite topic ever since I was a little girl. Just like love,
yes,
love between family members, siblings, love between romantic love, has always been like something interesting to me that I would always, pay attention to, focus. I would watch lovers, out in public. And so this is an epic love story. And so,
yes. And you
yeah.
know what, Lily Patel, I would like to ask you about a picture that I saw of you and in a wedding dress. You had a beautiful, beautiful
Oh,
wedding dress on. And in the caption, you said that that wedding dress, that you don't have any pictures. That is one picture that you have in your photo album. And if that picture is destroyed, that wedding dress is no longer to be seen or shown because you don't have it anywhere else. And
right.
that was a phenomenal, phenomenal message to me that, it to me, it identified something beautiful, something talented, something to remember. And knowing now that, we have all this technology to save, pictures, here and there. And, it's just like, it just sent out some type of message to me that was really, phenomenal. It was a phenomenal message to where people would look at it like, wow, like something, you can have something beautiful and you're willing to just let it let it die in peace. Let it die in beauty. Let the demise be very peaceful and beauty. And it's a memory that will always stay with me in my mind, but not to be seen. But for whoever see it, you will still see it, and it still lies in us, within us. And it goes back into like that was a gift that was presented to us. And it's just a power, of letting something beautiful die in peace and not worried about if, oh, where is it, where is it, where is it, it's gone in peace.
Right.
It was something that was here and something to be remembered. So I just really thought that was really phenomenal. I love the essence of the message that you put there on
Thank
top
you.
of your wedding dress.
Yeah, that was from 20 years ago. And right, and we didn't have like my wedding video is actually like on a VHS tape. And like my photos are actually developed photos in a photo album. And so whenever I post a picture from my wedding, it's always like a picture with my phone of the actual picture, So Yeah, because it was from so long ago where, people didn't have digitalized versions. And yeah, I know that I could get my VHS tape converted into like a digital, version, but like the quality is different. It's just,
It's
yeah,
just so different.
it's just
Yes.
different. Yeah. So I was just thinking like, I don't even think I have the, what do you call it? Like you develop the photos from the negatives or whatever, what they call negatives. I don't have the negatives for those photos. I just have those photos. That's it.
Yes.
I think the original photographer has the negatives if he still has them from 20 years ago. But yeah, it's a different, but yeah, it's just like when it's beautiful. Like you said, it's like when my mom lately, she's in her 70s, has shared photos. She'll take a screen or she'll take a photo with her phone of some photos from old photo albums from when she was a little girl. And it's just so neat seeing that snapshot. It's like I was saying, like that would have been page 15 in her 2000 page life now.
Yes.
And it's so neat to see that, get that little glimpse. And whenever I see a picture like that, like this whole story just develops in my head because of you look at the details in the
Yes.
background, the location, the
Yes.
expression on her face, who else was in the photo, what else was in the photo, was she holding something, like she was holding a flower or something, and
There's so
what
much.
made that
There's
little girl
so
pick up
much
that
you can
flower.
find.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's just exactly. And oh, one more thing I wanted to say is my daughter, sometimes she's 11, gets frustrated. I hate studying history, mom. It's so boring. And I was
Mhm.
telling you a little bit about this. And I always say to her, well, that's because it's his story, and men focus on different things like statistics. This many people were killed during the battle. Whereas if a woman wrote about it, she might focus on different details. Oh, he had this picture in his his pocket, and it was a picture of a woman. Who was that woman? Oh, he was fighting for this woman, that he left at home. And so, we might focus in on other details where, you know, the male historian might focus on his dog tags. What was his name? Where was he from? Like just like different details. And so I was telling her, you know what? In light of knowing that you feel that history is so boring that you don't even want to learn about it, maybe that's somebody, maybe, God is giving you a message like, hey, maybe you need to start writing her story instead of history,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, because,
Yes.
because we want to promote education. And if you write a fantastic her story for people to study, people want to
Yes.
study it. And what do
And
they,
see,
what
that
is that?
is the gift that she can have in her,
That's right.
as well, and it's like, as we spoke the other day about generational, you know, curses and stuff,
That's right.
and we pass down, what we have in us, our children can have in us the same gift that we have, they can have as well, and that was
Yeah.
a great message that you gave her, maybe, the Most High want you to write her story. And that was the greatest, feedback that you gave your daughter. Like, that was
Thank
very, very
you. Yeah.
powerful, to empower her, with that
Yeah.
message, and that's powerful message, her story.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, like I didn't actually embark on this journey,
Mhm.
of writing and performing as an actress until I had my children, because I just thought I can't encourage them that, the sky's the limit or go chase your dreams if I don't do it myself. And so it's like that you were talking about this generational curse. Like I didn't want to follow my parents' footsteps and
Yes.
tell my children that they need to study hard and turn their backs against their dreams, but they can go ahead and follow their dreams, because you can make a career out of the things that you're passionate about. Even just this morning my son was like, oh mom, I never want to work is so boring. I was like, you know what, you could be the person at the racetrack because you were the engineer that developed that Formula One race car. And that's why you're there. And you can get paid for it because that's your job. And it was like this, his eyes were opened up. He was like, oh my gosh, really? I could get paid to do what I like. I was like, you better believe you can, you know?
Yes,
But it's just like, yeah, it's just like, how important it is. And that would be his way of using, a gift or his own voice,
yes,
he's very gifted in, engineering and taking things apart and putting them back together or building things. And so if he uses those gifts, people could benefit from that. But it's like you were saying, like how important it is to share our gifts, because you don't know how people could benefit from it down the line, down the road, right? So
yes,
yeah.
exactly. Yes. So, yeah, um, it is so important to acknowledge, you know, our hidden gifts, and once we discover what's hidden, then acknowledge, embrace
That's
it,
right. And share, embrace it and
share.
share it.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I just want to thank you so much, Lily Patel, for bringing that inspiration here with us here on today on the Regina Queen Show. As you are encountering some social phobia, and you still wanted to enlighten and empower and inspire others to embrace their gifts and talents. And I think that is
Absolutely.
so wonderful, and that just shows how much, your project um, can and will be powerful, and impact others as well, today, because there's so much going on in our world. We either, and I wanted to say to you and to everyone else, either you stand for something or stand for nothing. And
Yeah.
you got it, get it, put it out there, and just do it. Just do it, and just don't worry about what others or anyone say, because that will be part of your legacy.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you so very much, Lily Patel. And
Thank you. Thank you.
yes, and we just want to give a shout out to, everyone who are encountering social phobia. We want you all to know that you are stronger than what you think you are, because I was stronger than what I thought I was, after losing my children. And we still, it comes and goes, but I'm here, you know, to be the voice for my children and others as well, and to empower, humanity. And I am so thankful and grateful to be here with you today, Lily Patel.
Thank
I thank
you
you so
so much
much.
for letting me share my gifts and my voice. Thank you
Yes,
for
yes.
having this platform,
Oh, you're so
to
welcome.
allow us, to allow women, to feel empowered and to help empower other women and other people, not just women.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, thank
yes,
you. Because it takes guts too,
yes, yes. Because
to keep doing this,
yes,
because
yes,
you
and
never
I
know, maybe nobody's listening, but people are
yeah.
listening. They
Yes.
are. They are
Yes, they
listening.
are. Yes. And
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people do, they say, well, I do get men that say, um, okay, I can come on the show, but isn't it just for women? Because, it's Regina Queen uplifting women in all walks of life. And the reason why I started my organization for uplifting women in all walks of life, because I feel that everyone, every man, every woman comes from a woman.
That's the
And we
truth.
need to be encouraged and uplifted. We need the strength to be able to lay on that table, to go through the pain and give birth to this king or this queen, but everyone comes from a woman. So we want to
That's
keep
the
our women
truth.
encouraged and uplifted
Right.
and strong, to be able to take care of our families, and, just whatever life endeavors that, we need to do in life. So, and I always tell men, it's about you too, so you
Mhm.
feel free. So, like you said, everybody.
Yeah.
And yes, so I always
Yeah.
remind them of that. But thank you so much, Lily Patel,
Thank
um,
you.
for sharing your story with us all. And it really empowered me, and it really brought some attention too for protesters, peaceful protesters out there, who are protesting in a peaceful manner, execute your rights, and don't just sit back and say nothing. And at the end of the day, like we said, either stand for something or stand for nothing. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of the Regina Queen Show as me and Lily Patel go on about our day. And we hope that we empowered you. And Lily Patel, please, if you have anything you would like to say to our viewers, to give a message to someone, to empower someone
Thank
before we
you.
go.
Thank you. And actually, I just remembered I actually had named my series Stand Up. So, right. It was I had named it that. And the little short film that I wanted to
Wow.
film just as an excerpt so that I could use it to pitch for the rest of the series, The little
Wow.
short scene was called Stand Up
Oh
because
my
what had
God.
happened was, and especially with the lady who had her foot blown off, that's all it was all fictional, but she was just out there trying to stand up for her brother, George Floyd. And
Yes.
now her foot has been taken from her and she can't stand up. But she still
Oh,
can because she has her voice.
yes.
So the law firm is to help, we're helping, our brothers, our sisters, our daughters, our sons, our parents to stand up for their
Yes.
rights, for what's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And to give a voice to those who don't have a voice.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for that message, Lily Patel. Thank you so very much. And you have a beautiful, beautiful day. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
And
you, you too. Thank you so much.
and I'm looking forward to more that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye, everyone. Thank you for being with us here today on Regina Queen Show. Again, I would love to say it again and again. Either stand for something or stand for nothing. Have a beautiful day.
Bye.